Okay, this is a completely nonpartisan issue, but I'm referring to your use of the magic wand. Because there's a lot of magical thinking going on having to do with the private resort that's slated for High Mountain and Belleayre Mountain.
Okay.
And the magical thinking is, we've got to do something, or if we build it, it will somehow be great. And we see all over the country beautiful places that have been leveled or blasted and have nothing left, nothing built, nothing left, and a sack of debt handed off to the local taxpayers. So that's where the magic wand came in. There's a lot of magical thinking. We all read in the papers in the last few days that there's a suggestion that ORDA take over the management of Belleayre. And I think there's some concerns here about that as well. So I'll just lay those two issues out.
I look at these things as extremely separate. Now, I don't know if everybody does, but I very much look at things differently. Let's start with ORDA and we'll end with the High Mountain project. With ORDA, from my perspective, it's really very simple. I had a heart-to-heart with both Maurice Hinchy and with Joe Martens in Maurice's office. We had a long conversation about really what the right answers could be for this. And we talked about all options. Staying with the DEC, going to parks, falling under parks, working with, or going to an organization like ORDA. Everyone familiar with what ORDA is? It's a regional authority. It's where Gore, if anyone's not, please raise your hands. Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe it'd be good to explain what it is.
It is a separate authority, okay? Separate taxing jurisdiction as well. So that's the interesting part of it. And Gore and Whiteface are in that particular authority. Okay? So that exists there right now. The concern that we have with DEP through this process, or DEC, excuse me, I'm talking about DEP too, that's fine. The concern we have with DEC at this point is that they have a core mission, obviously, which is environmental conservation. They also run a ski resort. So when they get slashed, they don't slash core mission, they slash the ski resort. That's what they do. So we're very concerned about what that could mean, not today, but going forward, because we see more slashing than happen, not less. So we're concerned about what that could mean. And so there are those that say there needs to be some capacity. Again, please, we'll keep this very separate from any development here. There needs to be some capacity to be able to make sure the ski lifts continue to operate, make sure it continues that we're able to fund those things. There hasn't been much CapEx or capital expenditure done there in a very long time. So there's some concern with that. I tell people, whether it goes to ORDA, whether it goes to parks, or whether it stays at DEC, we can push for whatever anybody sees as the right answer there. What we simply said is, we're seeing momentum build in Albany, and I believe that there are legislators at the state level who will move forward state legislation, potentially for the situation to ORDA. So if it's not a decision made by the administratively, it may happen through the legislature. So that's something to be cognizant of. And we see this kind of train leading the station stuff. So if there's a desire for it to be something else, fight that fight. And that's fine. But be cognizant that there should probably be a parallel track going here. And that parallel track is to understand, make sure that there's also, if it does go the ORDA way, that you get the kind of language that really is going to benefit you and benefit the Belleayre area and benefit everything in this community built into that. Because otherwise what happens is, you know how it happens when you have 2 and 1, and these two are really close together and one's over here? This becomes disenfranchised, and these two get treated really well. So Whiteface and Gore will get treated really well.
Exactly.
That's something that's very much a concern of mine. So, and I've expressed this to Joe Martens, and if that model goes, there has to be a rewrite of a lot of things, whether it be what the board structure is, or what the bylaws are, to ensure that Belleayre isn't disenfranchised in that process.
You got behind this very quickly.
Make sure we're clear about this. I'm not behind it. I support in concept what is done if the language is done appropriately. Okay. That doesn't mean I also don't support other things. I'm fine with it if it goes to parks. And I'm fine, but I also want to make sure that it's properly funded. What I'm really concerned about is and I'm fine with it if it stays at DEC, if they set up reserve accounts and really fund it appropriately. I'm really worried that they're gonna slash and slash and slash, and Belleayre will be slashed out of existence.
Well, what happens if ORDA can't make a profit with Belleayre? Are they gonna turn and?
I think you asked all the kinds of questions that need to be asked in a public setting.
Well, I would love the opportunity
Sure.
to be present at that, and, you know,
I'll push for precisely.
you know, according to the SAGE Commission, that is one of the precedents of the executive order, is that there will be public participation.
There's no question that this isn't and shouldn't be a fait accompli, okay? I'm a big fan of having an enormous amount of involvement in these, especially by, I don't know, the people affected by it. So we'll push with Joe Martens, we'll push with our state legislators, we'll push with the governor's office for more public input on this soon. We initially fought to try to have Hunter, Belleayre, and Wyndham kind of work together with this cat ski fence. That was a big push, okay? For some reason, that kind of fell apart, even though we had fought tooth and nail, to try to look from a regional perspective, okay? Because I always say that we lose too many skier visits to Vermont. Okay, that's my personal perspective. You get this wonderful experience that we talk about, and you're much closer to home if you're from the metro New York area than going to Vermont, and we want to push for that. So we've gone on our own. We're pushing really hard to help this $400 million part of our economy, the tourism industry in Ulster County, where people come here, they spend their money, we get the sales tax revenues, property taxes stay low because of that, and they leave. And they use very few services. That's what we like.
I can tell you that my network from Belleayre, some of the employees, the main thing Belleayre really needs is a change in leadership.
Yes.
There's too much corruption, not actionable, didn't take pictures, blah, blah, blah. I think it should stay in DEC. I think it needs a change of leadership at the top and some supervisors along the way.
No, two things. That sounds like a really hard question for March.
Don't need it. Mark and I have discussed this.
But my
You
take.
don't need to discuss
No,
it because
but again, let's not leave this, the main point, which is that comes back kind of like to the ORDA, DEC, parks, whatever. If you have a particular perspective, voice it. I heard the message loud and clear. I'm going back, I'm gonna push DEC, I'm gonna push state officials, I'm gonna push the governor's office as hard as I humanly can for public input from here.
But
be
also
careful, you
opening-
won't get invited to the organization.
And also opening the books, some rationale for these blanket statements that are made. It's dying, it needs a huge infusion of cash.
Listen, if
Where's the basis
I'm
for
not
that?
gonna get invited back to the meeting, I can throw that on too.
Where's the basis for that?
Fair enough.
And if we've been losing all this money up there with increased skier visits, what has management done that has been erroneous?
We need fewer visits, skier visits, and
Maybe
then
we
that will
get
make
more
more money. That seems to be the logic. So just to keep in mind.
I heard you loud and clear.